Welcome to another episode of the Data Science Leaders Podcast. Our guest today is Peter Geovanes. Peter, how are you doing today?
Hi, Dave. Doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. So Peter is the head of data strategy, AI, and analytics at Winston Strawn. So you hear Winston Strawn and you immediately think that sounds like a law firm. Well, it is. So today's agenda is actually going to be focused on legal analytics. So Peter, what on earth is legal analytics?
Yeah, I think maybe the best way to answer that, Dave, is give you a little bit of my background.
Okay.
I actually started my career as a naval officer. I did 8 years active duty, went back to school to get my MBA. So let's call that chapter one.
Okay.
Then I embarked on a 20-year consulting career working at firms like Accenture, PwC, Alvarez & Marsal, Alex Partners. But I want to call out one 5-year stretch, which was 2000 to 2005. I actually worked at SPSS. Any of our data scientists or data people out there may know, right? SPSS and SAS are probably credited with kind of creating this whole wave of what we would call now data analytics or data science. So 2000 to 2005 was, I hate to say, was 20 years ago. But I really got a PhD level education. And it was funny, back then we'd kind of elbow each other. This is 2001, saying, I think this is the year this data and analytics thing is going to take off, right? Who knew? We were 15, 20 ahead of the curve. So let me go toward the end of that 20-year span. I guess I had the midlife crisis, decided, I don't have enough stress in my life. Let me go back to law school full-time while I continue to work full-time. And I probably like my second year of law school, I had this epiphany. The thought was, at SPSS and subsequently at other consulting firms, I'd been using data and analytics, and specifically predictive analytics, to help Fortune 1000 companies solve business problems using data and analytics. And I thought to myself, I've never seen anybody try to incorporate legal data. My naivety, is after the right word, was that, it's public domain, this data is available. Would it be possible to predict, dare I say, duration, cost, and maybe even outcome of litigation at the very onset by using some type of modeling technique? Had a little bit of success. I used for our data scientists out there, a survival model. Hazard Cox seemed to give us some insights into that. And then right around the same time, now I'm transitioning to chapter 3, the law firm, Winston Strawn, I guess they had their own kind of aha moment and thought, it's not going to be too far in the future where data and analytics would maybe augment an attorney's knowledge, intuition, experience, and we could use that for the benefit of our clients to give them a competitive advantage. So lo and behold, I'm not sure how it happened, serendipity we'll call it, but the job rec came to me. I will say now, 5+ years later, it was completely wrong. I knew where they wanted to go. I helped them rewrite the job rec, and I'm thankful to say I got the job.
Got it. So you had already received your JD, correct? Prior, and then you saw this job rec come your way, and you decided to. When you went into law school, were you going there intending to eventually become a lawyer, or were you going there thinking that I have this foresight, I have this background in analytics, I think the legal profession could use some analytics, and I'm going to go, become become basically a lawyer.
Was your idea, because that sounds brilliant, right? Here, in consulting, right? I would be, as you get more senior, you start selling work to clients. And What I found was I kept being in front of the general counsel trying to defend the statement of work that I wrote. And my immediate thought was, I don't want to keep going into these so-called battles or discussions unarmed. Even if I can go 1 year of law school, I know contracts is one of the courses. I would love to get that knowledge. Well, I think part of it was once I started doing it, law, as you would probably imagine, is very analytical as well. So it became my passion. I really enjoyed it. And then when the combination or the possibility started coming to me of, can I combine these two passions, right? My love of data and analytics, my newfound appreciation of the law. There's no jobs out there, but I'm wondering, it just seems like a natural. It seems like there's an opportunity to help, whether it's the law firm or perhaps even as a corporation, right? Helping the general counsel. So that was it. It was that simple of an idea. And thankfully, I was able to take my experience as a JD, MBA, data scientist and maybe help create a new little discipline for us as data scientists.
So I think there's a couple of angles to this. It sounds like there's helping out if you're a data science leader today, like helping out you're working at a large corporation that has their own sort of legal team and general counsel, and helping that team out. But you're working for a law firm, right? So you're both trying to. There's a sales side to being a lawyer. You have to get clients. I imagine you're helping there, and there's also helping Winston and Strawn actually win cases, right? So helping them better understand the judges that they're going to be in front of, and tendencies and that sort of thing. So what piques my interest is how analytics plays a role in helping win cases. I think we'll eventually get to some of the other aspects as well. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you've done there.
Yeah, so absolutely. So you're absolutely right. When I think of my role at the firm, I kind of think in two different sections, right? The business side of law, which is, as you kind of alluded to, marketing, business development, helping the HR team recruit, right? Those are all fundamental things. No matter what business we're in, those are critical, and we know data and analytics can play a huge part in giving a competitive advantage. The other aspect that you alluded to is more on the practice side of law, right? What can we do? So one of the first projects that I worked at the firm was something we called early case assessment. So there are a lot of great third-party legal vendors that give you information on judges, on the opposing counsel, how many times the judge maybe has ruled for the plaintiff, how many times the judge has ruled for the defendant, how does that judge compare to other judges in the same court or district, right? So you're starting to I almost think of it as a baseball card, right? You turn over a baseball card, you have the statistics of how they've done. So that's kind of what we're doing with early case assessment is we're trying to give our attorneys, collectively they would be a case team working on a litigation case, right? Some insights right off the bat. So they know, for example, the opposing counsel that we're going to, they always settle, but they always settle at the 11th hour. Well, that's great to know as an attorney, right? Because now you can also brief your client, the CFO or general counsel. This is their typical trend. Maybe a more extreme example would be the judge, right? The judge typically rules for the plaintiff here. However, in the instances that they have ruled for the defendant, and I should say our law firm, Winston Strawn, is typically on the defendant side, right? Here's the arguments that seem to resonate. We basically mined all of them, again, public domain. We were able to find this judge. We were able all the motions that went in front of this judge, and we've kind of found a pattern here, right? If you cite this case or make these arguments, it seems to be that may win the judge's favor. So very simple examples, but that's one aspect of, I'll call it the practice side of law, where we can give analytics an opportunity to shine.
Yeah, I think hopefully those in the audience will not be surprised to hear that judges have bias themselves and have their own tendencies, and we as practitioners can look through this data and uncover some of those tendencies to better help your law firm win cases.
And I have one other example, if I may share with you. So this is software. This isn't like some of the applications were homegrown. Other applications now are products that can be bought off the shelf. So we invested about a year and a half ago in an AI, I'm going to call it a due diligence tool. Okay, so the scenario is this. Typically, like for a merger and acquisition, company A wants to acquire company B. So the first thing that'll happen is the investment bankers and the attorneys will get together. They'll say, collect in a deal room, or for our sake as data scientists, basically FTP to a secure site, all the executory contracts, okay? And what we want is the attorneys to go through that and pull out certain data elements. It might be the names, the dates it was executed, the dollar amounts, is it automatically renewing? I'm sure there's 20 different fields that they're interested in this 50-page contract. So typically what would happen in the past would you'd get an army of young associates, typically first year, second year, third year, looking through 10,000 contracts and maybe collaborating on one spreadsheet to read through these, find these terms, put them in the spreadsheet, right? Very long, very, these are expensive resources, very costly to the client. So with this new software, and the tool we use is called Kira, Kira. It uses AI and specifically NLP, and it's already been pre-trained. So it knows if this is a commercial contract. The attorney can basically click on the left-hand side of the screen and say, I want parties, dates, area of law, etc., what they want. And the AI NLP will basically read through all these contracts that have been uploaded and pre-fill out that spreadsheet for you. So now the question comes to, if it misses something, that's where we're going to go look, or something looks odd in the spreadsheet. But we can quickly answer which of these contracts are going to expire in the next, 60, 90, 180 days. We can also quickly sort them by dollar amount. So what would have taken 1,000 man hours, I can do in a day, in one day.
Right.
So it's huge. But what's interesting at a law firm, we build time and materials.
Right.
Am I a hero or am I this technology? But what's happening is clients are getting more sophisticated. You could fix bid that.
Sure.
Would have taken, I'm making these numbers up, 250,000. We'll do it for 100,000. We're going to bring technology to this. You can actually increase your margins, make it a win-win for the client, and hopefully, as a law firm, be able to do more value-add work than just cross-eyed looking at contracts.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking more about your billable hours, not sort of going down, you're just opening yourself up to competitors, right? And law firms compete just like every other company out there. And if you don't innovate and come up with better solutions that are faster and potentially cheaper, then you're just going to get undercut for sure. So I think what's interesting is that we're sort of talking a bit about contract analytics. I know. Just for my own, background, that dealing with, contracts is the bane of many companies' existence, and not just law firms, but also dealing with order forms and from a vendor standpoint and vice versa on the customer side as well. So I imagine that this type of NLP is sort of applicable not just in the legal world, but beyond that as well.
Yeah, great point. And I think that's what we're seeing too. As I mentioned, clients are getting more sophisticated, but that also means they're bringing these tools in-house, whether it's to manage their vendor contracts or whatever type of purchase agreements, right? But to be able to quickly build a database, extract those elements that you need, have a database, be able to search that, be able to proactively know if something's going to renew in the next 30, 60, 90 days, bring that to your procurement team. But this legal tech, you think of it only for a law firm, but I think to your point, Dave, it's a much broader market, and I think there are a lot of applications. And to the people listening, my experience has been the general counsel's office from a BI perspective or from a data and analytics perspective is typically forgotten. The general counsel has a lot of money. They have a lot of needs. My suggestion would be endear yourself to them. There's a lot of simple use cases, whether it be create a dashboard for them, that will absolutely endear yourself, and you'll make a huge difference in your organization.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it could be, like I said, the type of work that you're doing there could be, very easy to do, but you can, it's never a bad thing to win over your general counsel and have them on your side. So,
amen.
That's good stuff. So let's maybe, switch over and talk a little bit more on the business side, right? So if you were working specifically for a law firm and you were working, with some of the partners, like what are some of their needs?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, right, as you become a more senior attorney, ultimately you want to make partner. One of the qualifications is your ability to bring business to the firm. So I'm not going to say there's a quota per se, but you have to have a book of business. You have to have clients. You have to be well respected, right, in the industry. So it's a tough job. Business development is something that has to happen all the time. Attorneys are busy people. They typically aren't working 40 hours a week. It's more like 50 or 60, but it has to be done. So again, a quick story to share with you. I was at the firm maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I happened to go out to lunch with my friend Amy, who's a director in the business development department. And again, I'm pretty naive to this, so I just asked the question knowing, I may sound silly, but I said, hey, Amy, help me understand, how does a large law firm like ours conduct business development, and what does your team do to assist them? So one of the examples she shared was, she said, we subscribe to 5 different news services. So every time a lawsuit is filed, whether it be in a state court or federal court, we get, I'm just going to call it an email, right? An email alert, and it's going to have some basic information in there. It's going to talk about the nature of the suit. It's going to talk about the venue. Is it federal court, district court? Is it state or federal? Who the opposing counsel is, who the plaintiff is, and perhaps maybe the judge has already been assigned, okay? So I said, interesting. So what happens next? She said, well, we have a central email box that we send them all to. And then the next morning, I have a team of analysts basically go through these, I'm going to call them leads, looking for the needle in a haystack. I said, well, how many do you typically get? She said, it varies, but let's say for average about 1,000 of these come in a day. Okay. Well, how many are typically, we'll call them, hot leads? Pretty low, maybe 5, maybe 10. Okay, so pretty low. And I said, how much time does it take? So, typically I got 2 people working, let's call it anywhere from 8 to 16 FTE hours a day to get this out. And then we turn it around to the attorneys, hopefully by the end of the day. I said, interesting. So now I put my data scientist hat on, and I'm thinking, okay, by chance, do you happen to keep the ones that you've accepted and rejected maybe 6 months worth? She said, yes, I do. And I'm thinking, this can be automated. This sounds like a neural network, right?
There's your training set, yeah.
And we could basically use the ones that you've done in the past, and we can kind of imply what the heuristics or business rules that you apply. For example, we do B2B law. So like slip and fall at the local Walmart, that's not us, or the auto accident. So those will automatically be discarded. But still, right now, somebody's reading through those. So just to end the story, that's exactly what I did for her. I built this solution, which takes the emails, it parses them, takes unstructured data, parses them, puts them into a database so it's structured. Then I do some modeling on top of it. I score everything, and I'm able to tell what are the leads and not. But what I didn't think of, Dave, is there's some really interesting consequences here. Number one is I freed up those 2 FTEs to do more value-add work. That's pretty good. Secondly, instead of having that lag of 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, we're done instantaneously. So potentially, we're the first in the queue to call that general counsel saying, hey, I heard about this. I think we can help you. That's pretty good.
Right.
The third part, though, is the one that really got me excited, and it completely escaped me. So I told you I'm parsing every email that comes through, but in essence, I've built a database of every lawsuit in the United States in real time.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm using a technique called augmented analytics. So what augmented analytics is, the way I like to think of it as a virtual assistant, okay? So it's constantly looking at the data and trying to find trends, correlations, outliers. And then it presents it to the business development team as much as like a physical analyst would. So an example, let's use automotive. So let's say that the data shows some litigation going on, perhaps at Ford, General Motors, Nissan, Toyota, and maybe you want to do work at Tesla. So the system's alerted you, something's going on, maybe it's with airbags, new litigation. We could pass that information on to the partner that has a relationship, and they could call up perhaps that general counsel, Mr. or Mrs. General Counsel at Tesla, and say, listen, I don't know if this legal problem has hit you yet, but we're seeing this across the industry. More importantly, I'd love to get a conversation with you to talk to you about what we can do proactively to get ahead of this. Dave, that changes everything, right? The law firm is now basically out there as a fiduciary, mitigating the risk of a potential client. That's what we built.
Right. That's super interesting. So it sounds like you're recognizing patterns within an industry, recognizing that you don't need to go just necessarily to the person who's receiving that case, but also to others in that industry that might to sort of head it off the pass and get ahead of the game.
Yeah, right.
So to speak.
Retail, could be manufacturing, could be hospitality, right. Life sciences. Right. I just used auto as a simple example.
Right. No, I mean that is absolutely fascinating. I think. The approach that you took, can be also applicable in many other areas, right? Not just the legal profession, but, you could be looking at, inbound sort of, marketing, messages and trying to better uncover, leads and qualified leads from that perspective. So I imagine, the approaches you took were predominantly sort of in the NLP, type area as well. I'm curious if, what sort of, was there an actual increase in, the number of sort of clients landed or anything like that you could, that might be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I do know those numbers.
Yeah.
So I can tell you the accuracy of the model was over 96% when we rolled it out. I also love telling this story too. Once we went live with it, my friend Amy wrote me an email, and the email said something like this. She said, "All right, Peter, I got to be honest here. When you said you could do this, we were more than a little bit skeptical, but this thing has knocked our socks off." So later, a couple months later, it would have been November of 2019, just before COVID, my friend Amy presented a high-level discussion of the solution at a legal competitive intelligence conference. And thankfully, she shared some of the comments that came back, and it was like really great stuff. Like peers were saying, "My God, you guys are at least 5 years ahead of every law firm." Another one was something like, "This seems like a license to print money." So on that aspect, we're looking about $20 million per year. We're $1 billion law firm, so call it 2%, increase that this does, and that's year over year, the gift that keeps giving. So it's been helpful.
Well, this is fascinating. I do have to say, Peter, that those in the audience who are not in the legal profession are probably nodding their heads and thinking like, we've done something similar, years ago in my own company. So there is a little bit, I think, the legal profession, and I say this lovingly, just because my sister and my father are also lawyers, and I just look at their day to day and hear stories about them, and they're a bit behind some of the rest of the industry. So I think it's due for some modernization, and I think certainly in the data science realm.
I wouldn't argue with you at all, and that was one of my, I guess, first aha moments too of coming to a law firm was, my God, they're at least 5 years, maybe 10 years behind what I'm doing for other industries, and I'll just call them Fortune 1000. So part of it's really nice is a lot of those use cases that I was able to do earlier in my career over that 20-year, I'm bringing them to a new vertical, and all of a sudden I'm being celebrated. Like, wow, this guy's an innovator, right?
Yeah.
So it's great. And more importantly, too, I love the opportunity to speak and kind of share what I've done. And, there's that fine line. You have to kind of protect the secret sauce, but at the same time, I'm not giving any modeling techniques away. So we're just talking generalities or, kind of possibilities here.
Yeah. And I have to think that if you are a law firm, listening to this, if you're a partner at a law firm listening to this podcast, you would think that like this should be an area of investment. I mean, again, like, tying into some conversations that I've had with my father over the years, he would lament having to go in front of certain judges just because he knew what their tendencies were. But the way he found out those tendencies were typically just word of mouth, right? It was just, I had I went and I immediately talked to some of my fellow lawyers who had pleaded a case in front of this judge and tried to understand what I was sort of up against. But if you're building like these baseball cards, if you're building around these various judges that you might be seeing, I mean that totally changes the game. I mean that takes the bias and the incomplete information that you're getting from your fellow lawyer and puts a whole new lens on it.
I think the other thing, Dave, to consider is you're absolutely right with that analogy from your dad. But COVID changed everything, right? Our culture at the law firm was you needed to be in the office every day for that exact reason, right? Very collegial, being able to talk to your peers and get their insights, and COVID destroyed that. So how do you consider or how do you keep that competitive advantage when you're working out of your kitchen, right, for the last year and a half? So data and analytics maybe fills that gap.
Got it. Well, is there anything else that this has been absolutely fascinating. I'd love to know, like, what do you think is next in the world of legal analytics? Like what are you thinking about, a few years into the future? Like, where do you think this is headed?
So a couple thoughts. One is we're starting to see it in the industry. Traditional Big Four consulting firms like Deloitte and EY are getting into the legal game.
Right.
So what I sense is not too far future, right? Clients are asking for basically bringing in, I'm going to call it accountants and traditional CIO advisory and legal to work as one consolidated team together on their business problems. So I think that's a real trend that we're going to see continue. Secondly, in the lawyer's professional responsibility, the American Bar Association basically talks about that attorneys have the word is duty to keep abreast of technology, right? Mm-hmm. We're still kind of early in that wave from a legal perspective, but I would foresee in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see our first malpractice case because some law firm represented a client. They didn't use the data and analytics. The ruling went against that client, and they're going to sue them for professional malpractice. So those are my thoughts, but I see the writing on the wall. It's going to happen. So
I wonder if there's
and they got to be able to bring it to bear.
Yeah, I wonder if there's an easy way. I don't know. This is not my bailiwick, Peter, but I wonder if there's an easy way to appeal cases, right? Just by doing, using some of the analytics that you provide. So if you have, paralegals who did something manually, and then you are able to, take a look and say, actually, like what they calculated as, I don't know, the number of contracts that are overdue payment or whatever is not actually, correct, right? It's different, right? And that materially changes the case in some way. Like I don't know. That would be an easy way to sort of audit these things.
That we spoke of, right? You could look at all the cases that went to the appellate courts, and then you could identify which ones were successfully overturned. See if there's any patterns there, right? Same thing. What were the arguments made? In this district, what seems to resonate with them? So I've never kind of taken it thinking through the appellate process, but I think the concepts are interesting.
Yeah. For sure. Well, cool. Well, I think I've learned a lot today. I think it's interesting. It's very interesting that the world of data science can be applied in all sorts of different realms. And the legal world is I think due for a little bit of a refresh when it comes to data science. I wish our judges out there were not, were not biased and just, read the law as is. But there's a lot of interpretation, and there is a lot of that gray area, and understanding what the judge's tendencies are, so that you can have a better chance of winning the case makes a lot of sense. I think helping out with business development makes a ton of sense. Even helping out with recruiting and HR. These are things that. Every company sort of has to work with, whether you're in the legal profession or not. And I think it would be, one next step for those in the audience out there, might be just to have a conversation like Peter did, with, internally, with your head of counsel, and just, talk a little bit and try to understand their problems and try to understand some of the manual processes that they're working on, and seeing where data science can play a role.
Yeah, that last point, Dave, is absolutely critical, right? Stepping outside maybe your comfort area, which is maybe just data and analytics, but having those business discussions, finding out what I'm going to call them your internal clients, right? What's keeping them up at night? What are their processes? Can any of those processes be automated or improved? These are great ways to endear yourself to the business.
So, Peter, the world of legal analytics is certainly new. And that's what intrigued me about having you on, and one sort of spurred me on to have you on the podcast. Are there others out there that are starting to recognize this as its own thing, like its own sort of genre? Like, are you starting to see an industry form here around legal analytics?
Yeah, I guess two things. So definitely what I've seen over the course of 2020 and 2021, a lot of startups in legal tech and a lot of venture capitalists pouring money behind them. So I think there's absolutely a market there. From a personal standpoint, right, I kind of tease my wife. It's like, you better be nice to me. In certain circles, I'm a big deal. And she laughs. Like, But it's really true. I would say maybe from 2019, I've been asked to speak at conferences, whether it's be on a panel or perhaps even keynote. I've been written up in a number of legal magazines like Law 360, American Lawyer, and then most recently, I was named, I think it's top 100 innovators in data and analytics, and I was a finalist this year for Legal Innovator of the Year. So yes, I guess the recognition is coming, and I think it's really a credit to the firm and the leadership to give me the ability to have a canvas to paint on, so to speak. And people are taking notes that we're doing some really innovative things at the firm, not only from a business side, but as we've talked about, to help our clients.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, thanks to this podcast, hopefully the secret will be out, and you might have some competition out there. But as they say, like if you didn't have competition, that might be a bad thing. So, but if you have competition, there's recognition that like this is an area where investment needs to be made, and hopefully you'll be seen as one of the vanguard, if you will, one of the innovators that sort of spurred on the world of legal analytics. Well, Peter, thank you so much for being on the Data Science Leader podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time. If people want to get in touch with you, can they hit you up on LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks a ton, Peter, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye.